We're closing the border, and we're drilling.
And you keep us moving towards energy independence.
Our country must cut back its reliance on foreign oil.
I said we're going to need oil for at least another decade. See, and beyond that, we're going to need it.
To the surprise of many, the United States holds the title of the world's largest oil producer. That is right, surpassing Saudi Arabia, outpacing Russia, and exceeding the output of any other country often associated with massive oil production. But here is where things become even more intriguing. Over the past year alone, the United States has produced an average of 21 million barrels of petroleum per day. At the same time, domestic consumption reached approximately 20 million barrels per day. This means that in theory, the country produces more than enough oil to meet its own energy demands. Yet despite this, the United States continues to import millions of barrels of oil from abroad. In fact, a significant portion of those imports come from OPEC nations, the very group of oil-rich countries known for controlling global supply and prices. This raises an important question. If the United States is capable of producing sufficient oil to sustain itself, why does it remain dependent on foreign imports? Why does America continue purchasing oil from the Middle East, from Venezuela, and from Canada? And beyond that, why does the country export so much of its own oil, while simultaneously buying from other nations? If energy independence is the goal, would it not make more sense to retain American oil for domestic use? If you are finding this analysis interesting, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss future discussions on global energy markets. The reality is far more complex than it appears. The oil industry does not function the way most people assume. It is not as simple as extracting crude oil and immediately using it domestically. Instead, the situation is shaped by historical decisions, economic policies, global trade dynamics, and even the specific types of crude oil available. To fully understand this paradox, we need to take a step back and break down how the United States manages its oil supply. First, consider this: despite being the world's largest producer, the United States does not possess the biggest oil reserves. When people think of oil-rich nations, places like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Venezuela often come to mind. That is because, in terms of proven reserves, the estimated amount of oil still underground, the United States does not even rank among the top 10. According to the latest figures, America has approximately 36.5 billion barrels of oil in its reserves. That might sound like a lot, but when compared to Venezuela, which possesses over 300 billion barrels, it is clear that the United States has significantly fewer reserves.
We've got about 35 years worth of oil left in the whole world.
It would be very, very disruptive to the economy for the U.S. to say all of a sudden, we're not importing or we're not exporting. We're just going to work with what we have. The Chicago refineries would find they have no oil to refine. It would take decades to sort that out.
If this topic is grabbing your attention, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the United States should change its energy policies to rely less on imports? Despite its relatively small reserve base, the United States has outpaced these nations in production due to advancements in extraction techniques and a different approach to oil management. Unlike Saudi Arabia and other oil giants that strategically limit production to stabilize prices, the United States has opted for a more aggressive strategy. Instead of holding back supply, America has maximized output, capitalizing on technological innovations like fracking to extract oil from previously inaccessible reserves. This approach has helped drive global oil prices lower, benefiting consumers but disrupting traditional oil-producing countries that rely on high prices to sustain their economies.
And I'm sure that most of you notice when you go to fill up your tank of gas in your car, oftentimes it's below $2. You said, how the hell did this ever happen? Thank you, President Trump, right? And we will remain energy independent. It should be for many, many years to come.
Unlike OPEC nations, where oil revenues form the backbone of government budgets, the American economy is diversified. Oil plays an important role, but the country also generates revenue from sectors such as technology, finance, and manufacturing. This allows the United States to produce oil freely without the same economic concerns as nations whose stability depends on energy exports.
It's very profitable right now to drill in the United States. U.S. oil production hit 13.4 million barrels a day. People were saying we'd never get past 12 million barrels a day, so it's a big number.
Big oil companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, Total Energies, and BP have raked in nearly $173 billion of profits in 2023, according to the National Resources Defense Council. At the same time, billions of dollars worth of tax breaks incentivize domestic oil production.
Yet even with its record-breaking production levels, the United States still faces a critical problem. The type of oil it extracts does not always match what its refineries are designed to process. Not all crude oil is the same. American refineries, particularly those along the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, were originally built to handle heavy crude, a thick, dense type of oil commonly imported from Venezuela and the Middle East. Meanwhile, much of the oil currently being extracted in the United States, particularly from shale formations, is light sweet crude, which has a different composition. Because many American refineries were designed for heavy crude, they are not optimized for refining the lighter oil that domestic producers are pumping out. As a result, much of this American oil gets exported to countries with refineries better suited for it, while the United States continues to import heavy crude to keep its own refineries operating efficiently. This has led to a strange situation where America, despite producing more oil than any other country, remains reliant on foreign imports. At the same time, the global nature of the oil market means that American producers often sell to international buyers if they can secure higher prices abroad. The oil industry is driven by profit, not national policy, so companies prioritize financial gains over energy independence. If European or Asian markets offer a better price for American crude, producers will ship oil overseas rather than keeping it within domestic borders. Some have suggested that restricting oil exports would help America achieve true energy independence. The idea is that if all domestically produced oil were kept in the country, gasoline prices could drop, and reliance on imports could shrink. However, the reality is not that simple. The global oil trade does not operate in isolation. Even if the United States restricted exports, prices would still be influenced by global events, such as conflicts in the Middle East or production cuts by OPEC.
Gas prices could soon be headed higher after OPEC Plus countries announced a major cutback in oil production. Oil prices jumped more than 6% after Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait said they will cut supplies by more than 1 million barrels a day.
Additionally, limiting exports could harm American producers who rely on foreign buyers to sustain profitability. If these companies were forced to sell only within the United States, they might struggle financially, leading to lower production levels and potential job losses in the oil sector. Furthermore, the mismatch between domestic oil production and refinery capabilities would remain unresolved, meaning the country would still need to import heavy crude regardless. Looking ahead, the future of American oil remains uncertain. The global energy landscape is shifting, with growing investments in renewable sources such as wind, solar, and electric vehicles. While oil remains crucial today, its long-term role is less clear. Financial institutions are becoming increasingly hesitant to fund new fossil fuel projects, and governments around the world are pushing for lower carbon emissions. This transition raises questions about whether investing billions into refinery upgrades would be worthwhile in the face of a declining oil market. For now, America remains the largest oil producer while simultaneously importing millions of barrels each day. It is a contradiction shaped by economics, technology, and historical policy decisions. The balance between production, refining capacity, and trade will determine the country's energy future. Whether the United States can achieve true independence in oil or remain tied to international markets will depend on the policies and technological advancements of the coming years. If you found this discussion insightful, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analyses on energy markets and global economic trends. The world of oil is full of complexities, and we will continue covering the most important developments. Stay tuned.